Is it time for you to stop being hard on yourself? Is it time for you to stop putting pressure on yourself, unnecessary pressure on yourself? Is it time for you to stop setting unrealistic expectations of yourself? This month, I want to focus on how to lead and work stress-free, because this is something that has come up with several clients who I have worked with. The feeling of stress, the feeling of pressure, just feeling burdened by things that they don't really need to be burdened with. And just in the end, that actually affects the way that they are leading and affects the way that they are working. So is this you? Have you been putting unnecessary pressure on yourself? Have you been hard on yourself? This is one of the causes of stress, when we are carrying a burden that we do not really need to carry. It can cause stress to us as we lead, and it can cause stress to us as we work. Now, one of my clients who had been in a role for about a year, this was a role which they had just started out. It was about a year that they'd been in that role. And when they reached out to me, the issue was that the people who they are leading are really, really knowledgeable. They really know a lot about the areas that they are working on. They had a huge team of about 100 people, which means they were leading different teams that were doing different things. And when they reached out, it was because they wanted to know what course they could do so that they could be at the same level of knowledge as the team. What I pointed out to them is, might this be an unrealistic expectation? Might you be being hard on yourself? Because how can you become the expert or be the one who knows most of the 9 different things that the 9 different teams are doing, or that everyone else is doing? You are in a position of leadership. You're not in a position of knowing everything. So what this client was doing is they had put pressure on themselves to be the one who knows, the one who is the expert, because that is the way that they knew how to lead, by being the expert. But now they were in a position where they were leading teams that were doing diverse things, and in order for them to be an expert in all the diverse things that these 9 or so teams were doing, they would have to study I don't know how many different courses. So this was an unrealistic expectation, to be the one who knows it all. They needed to step into their leadership and just lead. So what are the things that could cause us to feel stressed, or that could cause us to be hard on ourselves? Number 1, unrealistic expectations, like that client of mine. What unrealistic expectations have you set on yourself? What things have you told yourself that you have to do in order for you to be a leader of this team? And ask yourself, are these things realistic? For example, I had another client who felt like their role, what they were doing in their role, was representing women. Is that a realistic expectation? Isn't that being hard on yourself? Because if you ask yourself, which women sat down and asked you to represent them? And that is a question that we can ask when we begin to put these unrealistic expectations. Like my client who wanted to know everything. Who asked you to be the one who knows everything as you're leading this team? That unrealistic expectation that you have set, that you're representing all women, you're representing a certain race, a certain gender, a certain tribe, a certain clan, you're representing your whole family, you have to know everything, you have to buy the most expensive car, you have to build a house, whatever it is that you're expecting of yourself, whatever pressure you're putting on yourself. And in the end, you're being hard on yourself because you have to fulfill these things that you have said you have to fulfill. Who asked you to do that? And who said that you have to do that at this time? I think that is the question that I want you to ask yourself. Where are you being hard on yourself by setting unrealistic expectations? Now, the second kind of unrealistic expectations that we usually have are the ones from the people around us. For those of us in Africa, we call it black tax. What usually happens when someone in a family or clan or family group makes it, you're the one who kind of like shoots up to the top and you make it, is everyone else now begins to put pressure on you to meet their needs. And this is something that usually pulls down a lot of people as they are rising higher and higher in leadership, as they are progressing in their career. They have these demands from the family, these demands from the extended family, these demands from the clan, these demands from other people who raised them, people who contributed to their upbringing, people who contributed to their education, making all sorts of demands on them, and we call it black tax. These demands many times are also unrealistic. So what you would ask yourself is, how can I still support the people who I want to support while having my life? Because what happens if you lose that job when all you've been getting, you've been giving to others? That's the question that I've asked a couple of people. What happens if you lose this job now? You've worked for 10 years, you're now in a position of leadership, everything that you're getting is going to satisfying the family. If you lose the job, you have nothing. And this can be a very huge burden on people because you feel indebted to the family. You feel like that you owe them because they actually contributed to your education, they contributed to your upbringing, and this can put unnecessary pressure and cause stress on you. So I would ask you, how are you managing the responsibilities, the extended responsibilities from your family? How are you managing these unrealistic requests, unrealistic expectations that you are the one who is going to satisfy and meet the needs of an entire family group, or an entire clan? That is a question you need to ask yourself, because again, this is unrealistic pressure on one person. Now the other things that could cause us to also have stress from being hard on ourselves is unconfirmed expectations, putting pressure on ourselves by things that we imagine we are supposed to do, especially at work. Now these ones are related to the supervisor. At times what happens is we have these conversations in the back rooms of the office, or you look at a supervisor and you imagine that the supervisor requires something of you, and you put pressure on yourself on something that is totally unconfirmed. At times you feel like the supervisor doesn't like you, or they are demanding this, or someone tells you the supervisor wants everyone to work 10 hours, or they expect everyone to come at a given time and leave late, or something of the sort. These unconfirmed expectations, these unconfirmed pressures that now you're being hard on yourself. You can't do what you want to do at the time you want to do it because you feel like you have to meet these things that you have been told that are unconfirmed. The question that I would ask you is, have you confirmed the expectations that you've been told about? These things that you've been told that your supervisor wants, the things that they said your supervisor prefers this is the amount of time that they want you to work, this is the kind of product that they want you to deliver. Have you confirmed that to the supervisor? Because do not allow yourself to now put pressure on yourself and put pressure on that team and be hard on yourself over unconfirmed expectations. Whatever it is that you hear, the supervisor is your supervisor also. So reach out to them and confirm the working hours, confirm the product specifications, confirm what they expect of you. And as you're confirming, you can also have the conversation about whether it is actually possible, or whether it's unrealistic, or whether you need time. Do not just allow yourself to go around putting pressure on yourself, being hard on yourself over unconfirmed expectations. The third thing is when you have actually fallen short. When your team and your team members are actually underperforming. At times what happens when we receive the information that we're underperforming, or you go to a review meeting, or the supervisor sends you an email, or you get information from the supervisor that you have either the product wasn't good enough, the service wasn't good enough, that you're underperforming. At times we begin to feel sorry for ourselves. You begin to feel sorry for yourself. You begin to have a pity party. And that can cause unnecessary stress because you're identifying yourself with a failure, or with a thing, the failing, the shortcoming in the product, or the shortcoming in the service. You sit, have a pity party, feel sorry for yourself for 1 week, for 2 weeks, you end up stressing yourself, getting sick, or something of the sort. What you could do instead is identify that as feedback. It is just feedback that the product the product or the service didn't meet requirements. It is nothing about your identity. You're not a failure. There is no need for you to own that. It is about the work that you're doing. So what you could do instead is to find out what is the indicator of the failure, to find out what is the cause of the failure and resolve it, instead of owning it, taking on that pressure, feeling sorry for yourself, and then stressing yourself and going down a road that could lead you to falling sick or something of that sort. So these are some of the things that we could look at to help us to ease the stress or to ease the pressure that we're putting on ourselves at work, the pressure that we're putting on ourselves as we lead. Let us ask ourselves. You can ask yourself the question, the expectations that I put on myself, who asked me to do this? And if you are being asked by your family to do stuff, is this realistic? Can I really do this and still survive and still thrive in life? If the expectations are about something you've had that the supervisor wants, have you confirmed from the supervisor that this is what they actually want? And have you had a discussion about how realistic it is? And if it is actually, the stress is actually coming from you falling short or the product or service that you overseeing falling short, then how can you resolve this without owning the failure, without making it about yourself? How can you stop being hard on yourself?